What's going on, ladies and gents, boys and girls, guardians and tenno of all ages? Joker back again, once again. So this is going to be a bit of an off-the-cuff video, so there might be some rambling here and there. But these are just my thoughts on the whole Destiny versus Warframe debate. Will Warframe kill Destiny? Now, I get asked this question a lot, and it's a fairly good question. With the coming release of Railjack offering space combat, a feature Destiny fans have been asking for since day one, which should have been a natural evolution of things from Halo Reach, and the upcoming open world expansion Fortuna, an open world space that will be 4 times larger than Warframe's previous open world space, Plains of Eidolon, along with story DLCs like The Sacrifice, and all of this content for free. Now, like I said, I do get asked this question all the time across social media, YouTube comments, during live streams, but I think this question misses the sadness in its asking. I mean, everybody wants to see their team win, but it's not a zero-sum game, and it's not one in which Warframe kills Destiny. Destiny and Warframe are fundamentally different experiences. Destiny is a first-person cooperative looter-shooter, with bits of RPG elements in there. But ultimately, if you play Destiny and you play something like Halo, you're gonna adapt fairly quick. But if you try to go from Destiny to Warframe, or if you just try to go into Warframe, you're gonna be pretty lost. And that's because Warframe is a third-person action looter with an emphasis on looting and character builds, and the repetition of tasks in order to make the repetition of those tasks even easier. But I have to ask, to what end? Raids? PvP? From what I can see from just some research, the PvP is terrible. Raids, as a concept, have been abandoned by Digital Extremes, and other endgame activities that the community sort of came up with on their own have been tweaked, like endless void missions, and they're not as lucrative as they used to be. So outside of Fashion Frame and being ready for the next release, or 10-hour endurance runs, there doesn't really seem to be a point. Like, these are things that you can do and build towards if you want to, but really at the end of the day, why are you doing this? Because you have nothing better to do? Which, don't get me wrong, that's a problem Destiny 2 ran into when they started removing light level from activities. And to be utterly clear, my Warframe fans and listeners, that's not a dig at people who like to do that sort of thing. Nor is it a dig at Digital Extremes. To Digital Extremes' credit, they have tried quite a few things to make endgame content, but none of it stuck. I think Warframe presents a lot of obstacles in the creation of something like a raid. Movement for one, but then you have things like power creep. I mean, how do you balance a raid? More so when you have frames that can just, like, sit there for 10 hours, not die, and, you know, kill things. Do you balance the raid towards them? Do you balance the raid towards mid-tier builds? Like, how do you keep that content relevant even after you decide that? I mean, can anyone really see Digital Extremes doing something like King's Fall in Warframe? And even then, if they manage to implement it, what kind of rewards do you give players? How do you keep them engaged? Not only do you have power creep, where the endgame rewards now have to be significantly better than everything else available, otherwise, how do you justify the challenge? But with Warframe, like WoW, like Diablo, it asks a new question of, well, if I could buy this in a marketplace, why would I grind through a raid for it? If I can either spend 20 hours this weekend grinding through a raid or 50 bucks, which one am I gonna do? This is a time versus investment versus cost argument. And a lot of people will pay that 40, 50 bucks. Again, this is why we have microtransactions. Now, that isn't a dig at players who do this or Digital Extremes. It's part of the game. But it is something that Digital Extremes needs to look at when devoting resources to these endgame activities. The two biggest hurdles I see for Warframe as somebody who's just getting into it is, one, it takes a lot of time to get to any of the interesting content, as Digital Extremes have made the choice to keep all the old content, but it's just kind of there in the way of getting to what I want to get to, like the Dreams or the Plains or the new story expansion, Sacrifice. At least for me, I feel like it's in the way. I find that drudging through all of this content isn't boring per se, but it's easy to burn out on. So I do think that Digital Extremes needs to revisit this content, but then again, that's time and effort and resources that's taken away from developing new content, so it is what it is. And second, coming from a game like Destiny, where the player spends 90% of their time in the end game, Warframe is all early to mid game with no real end game as I've outlined, so it is a little bit of a turnoff. All of that said, Digital Extremes as a developer is in a great place. The one huge boon that Digital Extremes currently has, the ball in their corner, is the only one that they need. It's the goodwill of the player base, and they have a lot of it. Now, I've seen some players not like some of the things that Digital Extremes have done in the past, where Digital Extremes, in their opinion, crossed a line, but from what I can tell, the community's opinion overall of Digital Extremes is fairly high. And it's pretty hard to not have a high opinion of someone when they give you a lot of stuff for free. On top of that, from what I've seen, Digital Extremes has a great pipeline of communication with their player base. And all of this does add up. So when they release buggy content, or they struggle to find an endgame that engages players, it's easy to forgive them because look at what they've already provided. And look at what they're working on. Their level of transparency is insane, and I think it buys them a lot of goodwill. Now, let's look at Bungie. With Destiny, more specifically Destiny 2, they squandered most, if not all, of the player base's goodwill. And that was goodwill that was already on shaky ground with things that they did to Joseph Staten, things that they did to Marty, and the release of Destiny 1, and Year 1. It wasn't until Taken King that players really started to believe that the ship was turning around. And what goodwill Bungie had earned back in Year 2 and Year 3 was squandered with Destiny 2. More so when you realize just how many of the same mistakes they made during Destiny 2's development that they made during Destiny 1's development, calling into question the competency of the development team and the management. And then on top of making all of those idiotic mistakes, they made a bunch more, like gutting systems, like random rolls, changing weapon slots, and Eververse. At the beginning of Year 2 for Destiny 2, we're going to be more like Destiny 1 Year 1. And I stand by that when I say that, because we will inevitably have a lot of the same issues that Destiny 1 Year 1 had with Destiny 2, now that we have those systems back. Because we have to go through all of the same balancing issues all over again. And again, I want to be clear, that's not a complaint. That's what we wanted, that's what we asked for. But it is also the reality of the situation. The moral of the story here is, it never should have happened. Bungie shouldn't have gutted these systems to begin with. There's also the optics. When you look at games like Anthem and The Division 2 and Warframe offering their DLC for free, and by the time a day one Destiny 2 player picks up Forsaken, they've already invested $140? And Bungie's standing there holding their hands out, asking for more money for a season pass, on top of having a very lucrative microtransaction infrastructure, it just looks bad. More so when your competitors like Warframe, by contrast, offer hundreds of hours of content for free, and both Anthem and Division will just require the purchase of the base game. That sort of dichotomy, if it doesn't put Destiny players at odds with Destiny, then it does put other gamers outside of the Destiny community at odds with Destiny and at odds with Destiny players. What do I mean? Well, and this is important, no one wants to be told that they're stupid for doing something. More so when the person calling the Destiny player stupid can make a compelling argument. When they can point at the lackluster Year 4, when they can point at bad DLC after bad DLC, when they can point at the $140 that you've invested into Destiny 2 with Forsaken just to have a working game, and then they can point at Warframe or Anthem or The Division and make a compelling argument, though I don't agree with it, that they're basically the same game but cost much less, and people are ultimately going to gravitate towards the games that their friends play. Also, the developers do tend to treat their player base better. Now, if we just look at Forsaken in a vacuum, you'll notice that the issues with Forsaken have nothing to do with the content coming in Forsaken. And when you compare Destiny to Warframe, Destiny has two really big things that Warframe doesn't have. A fairly engaging PvP, although the current Destiny meta is utter trash, and an endgame with the raid and the raid layers. And although I have my issues with some of the aspects coming in Forsaken, because of course I do, and I'm sure I'll cover them, the larger issue surrounding Bungie and Destiny is the well-deserved self-inflicted damage the last year has done to Bungie's brand. It seemed for a while there Bungie couldn't go a week without controversy, and then the quality of the content of Curse of Osiris or Warmind did nothing to restore the faith in Bungie as a development studio. And that's the sort of thing that kills a game or a developer. That sort of damage to one's brand. Well, that or EA. So, long story short, no, I don't think Warframe or Anthem or The Division will kill Destiny. Just like Monster Hunter didn't kill Destiny. Just like The Division 1 didn't kill Destiny, even after Destiny 2 and The Division's huge update. Just like Warframe didn't kill Destiny, even after Destiny 2 and the release of Plains of Eidolon. These are wholly different games and experiences, and they're only kind of the same if you tilt your head and squint. That said, the way Bungie treats its player base in comparison to the way these other games do, the way that Bungie does business with its player base, and the low quality of content that has defined Year 4, if that continues, then yes, Destiny will die, because it committed suicide. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below, and like always, stay frosty.